When you come to the Gettysburg battlefield, what you'll find is that one of the most visited spots is the spot where I am right now. This is the site of Pickett's charge, also known as the Pickett-Pettigrew-Trimble charge or Longstreet's assault. Now, this is where on the third day of the Battle of Gettysburg, Confederate troops charged across this field towards the Union line, and it was preceded by the largest artillery bombardment in the Western Hemisphere. Now, in the years after the war, this ground was farmed by the Peffer family. Peffers are the ancestors of Eric Dorr. And as you can imagine, if this was the site of the largest artillery barrage in the Western Hemisphere, there was probably a lot of stuff that was in the ground. So as they farmed this ground, there were all kinds of relics that were unearthed, and many of those relics are now on display at the Gettysburg Museum of History. So today, we brought some of those relics back out here to the battlefield and are going to be looking at them and getting a little bit of an education on what I would consider the most fearsome way to kill a man in the Civil War.
So we're at Ziegler's Grove on the Gettysburg battlefield, also known as the Peffer Farm. We've talked a lot about the Peffers of Gettysburg, mainly because they're relatives of mine and we have their artifacts at the museum. So the Peffer collection has been a great exhibit at the Gettysburg Museum of History and a great teaching tool for these videos. In my hand here is the Peffers of Gettysburg. That's Fred Peffer and his wife and his children. This photo was taken not too long after the Civil War, probably in the 1870s. And we're on a crest on Ziegler's Grove, and we're at a 12-pound Napoleon gun that was one of the batteries up here. And these guns had a smooth bore, and they shot a 12-pound round like a standard cannonball like this. We brought this out today for a teaching tool because a lot of what's talked about during the battle at Pickett's charge is the cannonade and the artillery barrage that happened at the beginning of the battle. So these 12-pound guns would shoot these 12-pound cannonballs, and they were usually thought of as being smooth and solid. But they also had these types. Now, we brought this out today as a teaching tool. I did not cut this. This is the way we got it. This is not from the Peffer collection. This is another cannonball. But it's to illustrate simply how this worked. It would have an explosive charge in the middle, and it would have little balls in it, case-shot balls. Here are some case-shot balls, or canister balls. They're about the same. These actually were found on the Peffer farm, found in these very grounds. And so the idea was to shoot this cannonball over the head of advancing infantry or other enemy artillery soldiers. So it would explode over their head, make shrapnel, and rain these little iron balls down on top of their head and do damage. And that would be what would be used against infantry at the beginning of Pickett's charge. And another type of cannon round, it would be fired in a different type of gun. You have these shells that look, this is a piece of one. This is a Schenkel shell that was found here at the Peffer farm. And again, it's a long, almost like a bullet looking shell, and it would have a hollow cavity, and it would also have an explosive center and case-shot balls inside. Same concept, this was just fired from a different kind of a gun. Now I'm going to show you a couple of the fuses here, running out of hands. So this is a Borman fuse right here. This would be the type that would be in these round shots. And it's hard to see because this was also recovered here at the Peffer Farm. It has little dials on here, and the artillery gunner would punch a hole in it depending on how long he wanted that fuse to last. 1 second, 2 second, 3 second, 4 second. So to be a good artilleryman or gunner, you would have to know math. It was a big math problem, figuring out how long it would take the shell to get to your enemy depending on how far they were and where you wanted it to explode above their head. Now here's another type of fuse. Now this one still has gunpowder in it because it looks like it probably didn't explode. This still has the gunpowder in there, and this would be the type that would be in these longer shells in the nose. Let me show you how it would go. They would screw in like that. Sorry, I'm kind of running out of hands here. It's getting a little awkward. But anyway, all this stuff was found here at the Peffer Farm just after the Civil War, except for this that I brought out as a teaching tool. And the Peffer Farm was, or the Peffer relics were found between 1865 and about 1900, maybe more like 1895. And that was all done while they were farming these lands. And when you would farm these lands, the last thing you want in the ground is lead and iron and toxic metals. So usually when they would turn the fields, or when it would rain, the kids would go out and pick up this kind of material and put it in a box in their barn to get it out of the way. And the Peffer collection is one of the only family collections that I know of that's still in the hands of the original family. So it's some pretty interesting stuff. And this is the first time I brought these items back out to the Peffer Farm for a demonstration.
Since we are talking a little bit about artillery, I wanted to pop over here and show this cannon. Now, as you were driving along Cemetery Ridge, it might be easy to pass by this artillery piece right here and not notice that there is an abnormal bulge in the gun. And if you do notice it, you may think that it was damage from the battle, that maybe the gun got plugged up and that it, backfired or whatever. That's not the case though. The theory on this is that in the years after the battle, well, some kids came out to the battlefield and loaded this thing up with some dynamite, and I guess we're trying to blow something out the end of it and damage the cannon. As a matter of fact, if you look underneath, well, there's a spot where you can see the bottom has been blown out of it. Eric actually has pictures of this cannon over at a maintenance shed that was taken in the 1960s. And the cannon wasn't always right here. At one point, I think it was over on Cemetery Hill. But anyway, if you come to Gettysburg and you are driving along Cemetery Hill right after you pass the Abraham Bryan farm, you can come and check out this damaged cannon. All right, now right next to the damaged cannon, here's another cannon that is a little bit different. And I'm going to go ahead and admit, Eric and I had some theories on this, but we called our buddy Mike Lentz, who is a frequent guest on the Addressing Gettysburg podcast, to get some confirmation. So what we were looking at is a vent hole in the cannon where you would put in a friction primer. Basically, you'd have your powder down in there. There's a friction primer that would go into this vent, and then when you pulled the cord, it causes a spark that ignites the powder and blows the round out the end of the cannon. Well, over time, this could get worn out, and then your friction primer wouldn't work properly anymore. So what they started doing is they would plug this up, and then they would basically just drill a new vent hole for a new primer to be put in, or basically a new vent hole where the friction primer could be inserted. So if you come here and you're wondering why this one looks a little bit different, well, that's why. It's just to keep this cannon serviceable.
So we retreated back from the battery a little bit so we could use this wall as a teaching tool here. So I wanted to talk about Canister. Much is said about Canister during the Battle of Pickett's Charge. Canister is basically a tin can like this, loaded with iron balls like this, about 28 of them. We have a teaching model here. This is a clear plastic cylinder with the balls in, and they'd be packed with sawdust like this, and it would have a plate on the back. Now, this particular canister, this is an authentic one from the Civil War. It would have this back part, and this is actually upside down. The front of it's down here. This would be tied to a powder bag. So the cannoneer would pull this out of the limber chest, put this into the cannon, poke the bag, and then use a friction primer. So when this would go off, when the cannon would go off, the powder would explode, and the tin can would basically break into a million pieces, vaporize, and these balls would go flying out at the soldiers advancing. Now, this is meant for infantry advancing directly on artillery, so or a position. So it's basically like, you know, I hate to use the cliche term, but a giant shotgun, because that's exactly what it is. But you can imagine with double rounds of these, triple rounds of these, plus all that gunpowder, these things would go flying through multiple ranks of men, tearing off heads, tearing off arms. I read a diary one time, I think it's the Dooley diaries, where they say the guy's head turns into pink mist and stuff like that. So this canister plate is from the Peffer farm. It was found right around here. The Confederates were shooting it right back at the Union soldiers. The Union soldiers were shooting it at the Confederate soldiers. And I wanted to bring this out. This is from the Peffer collection as well. This is a canister plate, and this would have been probably the front part, I believe. It might be the back part, but it just shows how, you know, the force of the cannon just bends that, and these things just go flying everywhere. I mean, it's a brutal weapon, and, you know, the guys who marched shoulder to shoulder, standing in ranks, facing that kind of devastation, it's unbelievable. But it happened, and it happened right here during Pickett's charge to Peffer Farm.